Okay, Revelation chapter 16. We're finishing up chapter 16. We're moving on to chapter 17 today. I've got chapter 17, the first part of notes dealing with the great harlot of chapter 17 are on the back table. We announced that Wednesday night. Also, part 2 of chapter 17 is now on the back table as well, and that covers the scarlet beast of chapter 17. So we should hopefully be able to cover the great harlot this morning, and then we'll get to the scarlet beast next week. All right, so last week we covered the seventh bowl and how that it was poured out on the air, and how this seventh bowl of wrath kind of demonstrates this full judgment on the Roman Empire. And as we talked about in verse 18, how that multiple times through Revelation we've seen these different events and how things have been added to it. You know, we have noises and thunderings and lightnings. Back in chapter 4, it was just those three things. And then later on, you had an earthquake. And then after that, you had hail. And now we've got a great earthquake and great hail. And this demonstrates this worsening, this strengthening of God's wrath. And kind of culminating here in terms of the destruction of this empire, kind of embodied, verse 19, by this great city. Remember, it's not a literal city, and we've talked about this great city before. The references to this great city go back to chapter 12 and earlier, and how that this is representative where all the people live. Okay, this is the empire, all the people that comprise this empire. And this idea of this conquering, of this bringing down this city, is divided into three parts. Not necessarily that it was literal three parts. The Roman Empire didn't literally get broken up into three parts. It ended up being divided after time, but that's not really what's referring to. It's the idea of complete destruction. And we're going to see that kind of play out a little bit in chapter 18 as well. But these concepts of kind of three parts, it's as if it's been taken apart and it's not going to be put back together. And verse 19, great Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Remember, we talked about these bowls of wrath and how that these 7 angels had the plagues, and it was mixed with the bowls of wrath, or mixed with God's wrath. The idea here is that this is God's judgment on the empire, and great Babylon is related here to the great city. And of course, Babylon, we've already recognized in Revelation, Babylon keeps being referred to over and over again. And it's not that it's literal Babylon, but that it's symbolic of that empire. Just as in Daniel, or as Nebuchadnezzar received this vision, this dream about these different empires. Remember the statue that was made up of the different parts, the bronze, and then eventually gets to the iron and clay. And of course, that would be the Roman Empire. But it was comprised, it had so many different elements of all of the others. But it wasn't as strong ultimately, and in the end, it wasn't as strong. And so verse 20, every island fled away, the mountains were not found. And we saw this earlier in Revelation as well, and and this is actually mentioned in Old Testament times in symbolic language, prophecies and things like that, showing that God's going to remove any way of escape. You know, earlier in Revelation, we saw how that the people were going to ask the mountains to hide them, and they're going to seek to have escape from God's judgment. And God's going to take every way of escape out. There's not going to be a way of escape for anyone on whom, again, this is specifically for those who are worshiping the false gods and idolatry in empire and so forth. And so then verse 21, we see this great hail, the weight of a talent, which is around 95 pounds. This is basically, you get hit by one of these and you don't have a chance. And so this is a deathly plague. This is a fatal plague. And therefore men blasphemed God because the plague of the hail, since that plague was exceedingly great. Notice there's still people alive. There's some who take chapter 16 and they read this as the end of the world or judgment day. But verse 21, what's happened after the city has been divided and after the great hail? There's still people there. Okay, is anybody going to remain on earth when the Lord comes? No. Everyone will go to judgment. There will be nothing left. In fact, Peter says in 2 Peter chapter 3, what's going to happen to the earth and everything in it? Melted with a fervent heat. Everything, all the elements will be burned up. So there will be no one left. And so this is, again, this is specific. And we go back to chapter 1, too, one as well, to recognize that this is something, these must shortly come to pass. These things must shortly happen. So we're not talking about something that's 2,000 plus years into the future in terms of the context of this specific judgment on Rome, obviously, that took place within those couple hundred years there, up until 313. All right, anything through chapter 16 before we get to our questions? All right, question 1, why is this bowl being poured out into the air? What's the significance of the air?
Air is everywhere, just like Satan's influence is everywhere.
All right. Remember, we mentioned the passage in Ephesians where Paul refers to Satan as the prince of the power of the air. And it's a sense of the worldly or the physical realm. Not that he's taken on that as if he somehow conquered the earth or conquered this realm. It's that God has allowed him this domain to be able to be active and to offer temptation and things like that. But that's not going to remain the case forever. And certainly this wrath being poured out into the air is going to comprise all those who have been touched by the prince of the power of the air, those who have been influenced, and certainly were the Roman Empire in controlling the world at that time and enforcing idolatry on people who sought to, who should have been worshiping Jehovah. They were forcing idolatry even on those who claimed to follow Jesus. I remember we talked about Pliny the Younger saying that he sought to make Christians recant and to turn back the name of Jesus. Those who were true Christians couldn't be made to recant. And so he would execute them. Question? Yeah.
I just think even in considering the workings of Satan or the devil, hopefully it's comforting to us in that God limits him. You can go this far and no farther.
Right.
Not just in a geographical sense, but like the story of Job.
Yep.
You can do this much or to this point, but no more.
Right.
So we still always we have choice, freedom of will and choice. Satan can be everywhere. He can influence, he can tempt, whatever. But we still, God is keeping him in check, if you will.
Right.
Throughout the book of Revelation.
Absolutely. And, you know, Paul tells the saints in 1 Corinthians 10, God knows what we're able to bear. Right? He's never going to be, he will never allow us to be tempted beyond what we're able to withstand. And there will always be a way of escape from trial, from temptation, so that we can remain faithful. He's never going to allow us to be put in a position where we can't stay faithful to the Lord. You're absolutely right. All right. Question 2. What elements have now been seen in the pouring out of these bowls? What 4, basic world elements, I guess you could say, do we see in all through the 7 bowls? Yeah. Fire, wind or air, water, and earth. Okay, all 4 have been found within these 7 bowls. Question 3, what seems to be the purpose of the multiple references to the lightning, thunder, voices, etc., and what is the significance here? Remember, we applied this back in Revelation 4 regarding the throne of the Creator and how that you had the lightning, the thunder, and the voices. But these were proceeding from where? Where were they coming from? From the throne. Yeah, they were coming from the throne of the Creator. And we noticed back in chapter 4 that this seems to indicate, even though man may not be able to see God working, is God working? Absolutely. Okay, does something have to be a miracle in order for the power of God to continue to work? No. Miracles are one way in which God showed his power, and that's the observable suspension of natural law. That's what a miracle is. But there's far more to the power of God than just miracles. providence and who knows what all else that God has at his disposal. Certainly one of the things that Jacob saw in his dream, what did he see in his dream? He saw a ladder, angels ascending and descending, right? And the Hebrew writer references how that angels are ministers for those who serve the Lord. Not that we ever talk to them or see them, but they're active, they're doing something, and God continues to work in those ways today behind the scenes, even though man may not be able to see it. And so in a lot of ways, these things that are proceeding from the throne of God, it began in chapter 4 with just these lightnings, thunderings, and voices. God is still issuing commands. He is still active. His power is still working. But now it's building up, showing a more pointed direction or pointed or specific target, I guess you could say, in terms of judgment from the throne. And that's what this is all about. It's the fact that this is coming from God. And it's towards those who are not serving him, those who are worshiping these idols. And so that seems to be the purpose of these multiple references and how that God is bringing this judgment about. And the significance here is that it has built. It's getting more severe as you go on. All right, question 4. Why is there a great earthquake unlike any had been before? John specifically says in verse 18, such a mighty and great earthquake as had not occurred since men were on the earth.
If these are representative of the Roman Empire, it speaks to the greatness of its fall.
All right. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? And the Roman Empire, we've seen how that there's been different, in fact, there's direct correlation to the imagery of the vision that Daniel had regarding kind of the different kingdoms and the different animals that kind of embodied those kingdoms, different characteristics of those kingdoms, and how the Roman Empire had all of those. And so it kind of comprised all of the most powerful elements of these previous kingdoms of Assyria, Babylon, and so forth, the Medes and Persians. And so it was the greatest in terms of world empires. It was also the last. Okay, there will be no other world empire. And Rome, it was as big as any world empire would ever get. And when it fell, great was its fall. And that's why this earthquake is such that had never been seen before, because no other world empire had ever been so powerful, so great. You could also say so wicked, but not that wicked is not that there's scales of wicked, I guess you could say, but because it was so wicked, great was its fall. All right, question 5. What seems to be the symbolism of the great city being divided into 3 parts, and who else was also included in the wine of the fierceness of God's wrath?
3, we're back to the totality of destruction overall.
Okay, yeah, so it seems like these dividing into 3 is the totality of destruction. It's this, not that it was literally in the sense of the city of Rome was literally destroyed, or that the Roman Empire was literally torn apart in a day, as seems to be described here. That's not the idea. It's just that God brought this about, and there's going to be a total removal of what it once was, and it will no longer be again. And one of the components about this is Great Babylon being remembered before God. But who all was involved in this? It's not just the empire, but who else? Anyone who worshipped the image, who sought to worship the emperors and worship the idolatry, they were what was included in this judgment. We see that throughout chapter 16, that this isn't just for the political structure of the empire per se, it's also the people themselves who are bringing this destruction on themselves. Part of this cup of wrath that we're going to notice is going to be dished out to this great harlot, because part of it is because of she's drinking of the blood of the saints, of those who died in faith, because she brought their death about. And certainly that's going to be embodied within these people as well. All right, question 6. What does the removal of every island and mountain seem to suggest? We just mentioned that. There's no place for anyone to go. There's not going to be any escape. Question 7. How heavy was this hail? Why do you suppose this detail is included? We already talked about the fact that it's estimates between around 90 to 95 pounds or so. But why this detail? Why is that specific detail mentioned in verse 21?
It's not common.
We have hail a lot of times, don't we? And I mean, from time to time, it might get as big as your fist, right? Fine. Dwayne's seen bigger. Have you seen a 90-pound piece of hail fall to the ground?
Seen 15.
15. Okay, that's 10 times less, 9 times less than what we're talking about. Why is this one so important? Because nobody's ever seen anything like this. Okay, I don't even know if scientifically if it's possible for a 90-pound boulder of hail to fall from the sky without breaking up first. I don't know. I don't know what the terminal velocity and how all that works. But it's something that is unnatural, especially in this place, in this area, in this climate that we're talking about. This is not something that would be a normal occurrence by any stretch of the imagination. Something that only could come from God. Something that was obviously a judgment. That's why that detail is included. Just, well, hail, okay, whatever. This isn't just hail. This is deadly. Okay, I mean, not only is it going to destroy all the people or kill all the people, but what else is it going to do? I mean, what would that do to buildings? I mean, somebody, at some point do the math on terminal velocity of a 90-pound piece of hail and how much speed that's going to have when it hits the ground. That's going to cause damage to everything. I mean, it's going to completely destroy buildings, crops, ships, everything. That's why that detail is included, because God is not going to leave anything uncovered. He's going to bring judgment to all of it. All right. Anything else through that one? And then finally, question 8, what is the significance of men continuing to blaspheme the name of God? In addition to the fact that obviously there's still people alive after all of this is done, but what's the significance? Why does that keep coming up? Men still refused to turn and still continue to blaspheme God. Why?
Reminds me of a phrase used throughout the Bible, hardness of hearts.
Okay.
Even in the face of this kind of punishment or destruction, they'll either refuse to acknowledge God or as he suggests in his comments here, they're looking to other so-called gods,
Right.
beings.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that is the big thing about this. It's not so much that men are literally taking Jehovah's name and blaspheming it, but rather that the worse things get, instead of actually taking a look at and analyzing what they're doing and why they're serving these false gods, instead of doing that, they're turning all the more to these gods, all the more to their emperor, begging for relief, begging for deliverance from things that do not live, move, or have their being within anything, and instead of the living God. Yes, sir.
Part of the irrationality of it, or illogical, is kind of like with Elijah's showdown on Mount Carmel. You're believing that gods who don't act, don't speak, don't talk, they're not moving or doing anything. Here's one that is acting, and you got kind of that same picture here. One who's doing all this stuff,
Right.
you're refusing, but still appealing or believing in something else is going to come and save you.
And the bottom line was they didn't want to. And that's the key component. They didn't want to. Remember Romans 1, one of the reasons why the Gentiles needed a Savior? What did they not want to do? They didn't want to retain God in their knowledge. Even though they knew God, they didn't want to know Him. They didn't want to remember Him. And so they set up their own gods so they could do what they wanted. That goes to that stiff-necked and that hard-heartedness, that refusal to change, and that refusal to do what they ought to. And even up to now, I mean, remember part of the purpose of the sounding of the trumpets was meant as a warning. And that men refused to repent, and they refused to turn back to God. And here in chapter 16, on multiple occasions, men continue to blaspheme the name of God. And it's almost this, and I might be reading into it, but it's almost this sense of sadness that men continue to do this, because you have it keeps coming up. over and over and over again. And I think it's meant to convey, remember, this isn't for the world, this is for saints. It's meant to convey a sense of sadness, of the fact that this is all vain, what they're doing. They're not going to gain anything from this. They're going to lose their souls for certain. You will be faithful because you continue to praise the name of God, continue to serve Him, but they will not stop. They will not change. And so kind of part a warning, part kind of recognizing the sadness of the state of man, that this is what is going to happen. They're not going to change. Even though God certainly wants all to hear the truth and all to come to a knowledge of the truth to be saved, to repent and be saved, but at the same time, He knows many won't. You know.
You made a reference in Romans 1 and jumped me over to chapter 10. They want a righteousness, but not God's righteousness.
They want their own.
They want their own.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's what they're looking for.
Yep. All right. Anything else through chapter 16? All right. Let's move on to chapter 17. Chapter 17 is, we're getting to kind of, I would say, the meat of Revelation. I would argue, actually, the meat of Revelation was back in chapter 12 and chapter 13. I mean, really, the whole crux of Revelation is in chapter 12 and chapter 13. If you can grasp chapter 12 and 13, we've got the rest of it. But the meat of what the world reads, the kind of the stuff that the world sees and takes out of context and tries to pull this and that, that's really here, chapter 16, 17, and through the end of the book. So starting here in chapter 17 and in verse 1, we are introduced to this great harlot. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication." And then in verse 3, he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, and like I said, our first part of notes is we're just going to focus on the harlot first, and then we're going to focus on the beast. Because really the whole second half of chapter 17 is describing the purpose of the beast and what it represents. Which means we need to understand who the harlot is first. And notice that verse 1, that this is something that, come and I will show you. And throughout Revelation, John is being invited to see these things that are to come. You know, in Revelation 4, he was invited to come see the throne of the Creator. You know, and over and over again, someone takes him and shows him or draws his attention to something, or he hears aloud something or other and it draws his attention. Over and over throughout this whole Revelation, this whole revealing of what's to come, John's being shown these things. But this time, verse 1, he says, I'll show you the judgment. This term for judgment here, it doesn't just mean to stand and determine. This term, what do you think this term means? This is the condemnation. Okay, this is the actual, not just the sentencing. This is the carrying out of the sentence of this great harlot. And I thought that was a really interesting component to this, is that this isn't just God determining what he's going to do. No. It's already been determined. I will show you this is what God's sentence is going to be. This is what he's going to do because of this great harlot. And we find that she sits on many waters, we're told in verse 1. We also see this in verse 15. It comes back up in verse 15, but we're actually told what these many waters are. What are they? Peoples, nations, tongues, symbolizing what? The world. Yeah, the world. All of the tendrils, the borders of the Roman Empire, all of the world is kind of contained in the phrase, these many waters. Okay, kind of this conflux where all of the trade routes would go, and all the peoples would, kind of be part of this network. It's all this Roman Empire. And all of this together suggests then, verse 1, that that's where this woman is sitting. Now we know, verse 3, she's also sitting on a what? A scarlet beast. Okay? So I suggest to you, some suggest, well, we don't know which one it actually is because it's a contradiction. Is it really? What would be, and don't look up pictures or something don't Google this because it's nightmare fuel. The beast and all this other stuff, it's nightmare fuel. But what can you imagine as it's being told to us, what would the picture look like? You've got the harlot who's sitting on a beast, and they're both on what? The many waters. It's not difficult. That's not difficult to harmonize, to understand, because both the beast, like we ride a horse, right? We turn it where we want it to go. Okay, it props us up. It helps us to go places or do this, but we have control over it. And I suggest to you that's exactly the same relationship between this harlot and the beast that we're talking about here. That's why verse 2, we're told about the kings of the earth. Now remember, these same kings of the earth, what are they being gathered to? Going back chapter 15, or middle of chapter 16. Remember the three unclean spirits were going around gathering all the kings of the earth. At what place? Armageddon, the hill of Giddo. So, and remember there's no such place, but it's a figurative concept, a place of battle. Well, these kings of the earth, these are the same kings of the earth that were being referenced back in chapter 16. That the that the unclean spirits are gathering together to make war against Jesus and against God. Well, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication. The inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So this woman, what is she doing? She's not only influencing kings, but whom else? The world. She's influencing all the world. And as a result of that, we see verse 3, he carries me away, we go to the wilderness, I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, we'll talk about the beast next week. But then in verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. Notice this is the second time in 2 verses that the term scarlet has come up. The term means crimson. Adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup. So notice how regal she's dressed. How she's dressed in wealth. In fact, the combination of purple and scarlet throughout the Bible carries with it a sense of not only wealth and luxury, but also honor and status. So it's not like this woman was necessarily even dressed like a harlot. She was dressed as if she was royalty. And that's how she's being portrayed here. And then you see precious stones and gold and pearls, and then she's drinking out of a golden cup. It's almost as if she's a queen, even though, is she once referred to as a queen here in chapter 17? No, she's a harlot. And yet, she's being arrayed, she's being provided things as if she were a queen. She's being supported, and everything's being given to her as if people are just giving all that they have to this woman. Well, then in verse 5, notice on her forehead a name was written. Why is it that it's always on the forehead? Easy to observe. We talked about that with the 144,000 and the name or the mark that was given to them, the seal of God. And remember that seal is defined in chapter 14 as the name of the Father on their forehead. And yet the mark of the beast, those who worship the beast and the image, what was on their forehead? It would be the name of Satan. I mean, if the 144,000, if the name that is on their forehead, the seal of God, these are my people, well then the reverse of that would be Satan. These are my people. These are the people who serve Satan. Well, interestingly enough, and she's not, this isn't a literal person, it's not describing a literal person, but on her forehead, we're showing this is who she is. This is her seal. Mystery. That's the first part. In the New Testament, the term mystery, does it mean something that is hidden? Like we have mystery novels and things like that. Is that something like we don't know what's going to happen?
Has it been revealed?
Or it had not been revealed, but now has. And that is a key difference between our definition of a mystery, something we can't understand, to the New Testament term, which is something that once was not understood, but now has been revealed. And I think that's really interesting that verse 5, this woman, even though she's portrayed as if she's a queen, as if she's worth serving, what is she in reality? She's a harlot. And the people who are serving her, they don't realize that. They don't know that. Just like when they were serving the great beast, the people who were serving the great beast and the beast of the sea and the beast of the earth in chapter 13, they didn't realize they were actually serving the great dragon, which is Satan. Okay, that goes back to that deceitful nature of idolatry. Well, here you have this woman who is arrayed and portrayed and presented as if she's a queen, she's royalty, she's regal and noble, and in fact, she's the exact opposite.
Her love is not real.
Yeah, it's not real. It's not real. And that's why verse 5, mystery, this is revealed. Okay, her true nature is being seen. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of abominations of the earth. Babylon the Great, a reference to, again, not just the city of Babylon, although certainly the city of Babylon was the capital of the Babylonian Empire, just like Rome was the city of the Roman Empire, or was the capital city of the Roman Empire. But it's referencing that seat of authority, that recognition that she's in charge. And I'm suggesting to you that this woman, she doesn't represent the emperors, she doesn't represent even the Roman Empire politically. She represents the idolatry and the character of idolatry that goes along with the worship of idolatry. That's part of the reason why she's got a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. There is both a spiritual component of fornication. Instead of serving the living God, they're serving false gods, just as Israel was accused of what we would call spiritual adultery when they were supposed to be in covenant with Jehovah and they were serving false gods. But there's also a sense of literal fornication, because what was one of the ways in which the people of Greece and Rome communed with their gods? Prophetesses and fornication. That's how. And so these abominations, and of course it wasn't just limited to that, but the abominations included sacrifices of things and pouring out of revelries and drunkenness and these parties and all of this stuff. That's part of that filthiness of her fornication. And so when it says she's the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth, it's that system of idolatry, but more specifically that character of decadence, that character of seeking wealth and pleasure of the world that ultimately was fulfilled in serving these idols. That's part of why we talk about Romans 1. It wasn't that they served idols and therefore their idols said it was okay to do these things. Idols can't say anything. So why did they make gods who said it was okay for them to do what they wanted? Because they wanted to do what they wanted. And so the God they made in their image told them they could. Well, that's no different than this. That's what one of the purposes idolatry serves. It gives you the freedom to basically redefine your God however you want to. And this is part of what this mother of harlots is doing. Contained within this system of idolatry and emperor worship is this character of decadence, this character of physical desire. And that's what she represents. She represents this component of the Roman Empire that was yielding this influence of idolatry, and with it, all the pleasures of life. I'll skip to the beast as well, just so that we kind of can see the construct here. The beast, and as we see at the end of middle way through the end of chapter 17, would seem to represent the political component of the empire, which means who had the reins of the political component of the empire? The idols did. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, these emperors, what did they want to be called? Gods. Living divas is what Domitian referred to himself as, a living divus. Divus means divine mortal. That's what he wanted to be referred to. And especially with Domitian on down, further down the line, you have more and more of these emperors establishing their own statues to be worshipped and associating themselves with the Greek and Roman gods. That's part of the reason why you have this, I guess you could say it's a symbiotic relationship between idol worship and the system of idolatry and the purpose it served in the desire of the people of Rome, of the Roman Empire, and then its political component. Yeah, the political component propped up the idolatry, and in fact the political component enforced the idolatry, but ultimately it served the idolatry. That's what it was there for. Idolatry, or the desire of idolatry, it would turn that political machine any way it wanted. And the political machine was more than happy to do so because it fulfilled its desires. It fulfilled what it wanted to do. All right, anything through verse 5? All right, verse 6. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. But the angel said to me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. So notice that John, he's seeing this, and he's marveling with great amazement. And I think it's not so much her appearance, but it's the fact that it's this complete disconnect between the fact that she's a harlot, but she's presented like this. She's not referred to as a queen. She's a harlot. How is she a harlot? She looks like a queen. And that's what this is being described as. Why is he marveling? That's why. And this is part of the reason why the angel says, why are you marveling? I'll tell you what the mystery of the beast is and the mystery of the woman is. But I think it's interesting that verse 6 immediately follows the name on her forehead. That John's seeing this, he's understanding, okay, this is Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, but she doesn't look anything like that. And so that's why this is kind of this component of amazement, not all in the sense of admiration. And I think we need to be careful not to associate admiration or a sense of allure or anything like that on John's end. This is just surprise. Okay, I mean, when Paul marveled that the Galatians were so soon removed to a different gospel, was he admiring them? No. He was shocked. Okay, he was shocked. And so I think that same component is here, a little bit of shock, of surprise with regard to John as well. And we read verse 15 about how this woman is, and where the harlot sits, the waters which you saw are the peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And then verse 18, the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. Now again, not literal Rome per se, but the empire, and more specifically the idol worship, the system of idolatry that served the purpose of the flesh. It served the desires that people had. It's that character that's being described here. It is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. It's not just the political component, but what were we told back in verse 3, verse 2? What are the kings of the earth doing? They're committing fornication with her. They're involved in this too. They're worshiping these idols. And whether you say, well, Rome was enforcing it. I mean, they're forcing them to be vassals. They're forcing them to serve their gods. Is that any excuse? Did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego serve the statue or offer up that praise or worship when the music blew that Nebuchadnezzar had set up? No. You have a choice. That choice may include, if you choose not to, it may include Rome kills you as a result, but you have a choice. And yet they chose to commit fornication. They chose this idolatry. One of the things that Bob Harkrider mentions in he says, God's judgment, in his commentary, God's judgment as portrayed by the 7 bowls of wrath was poured out against the beast, the false prophet, and those who had the mark of the beast and worshipped his image. It is important to remember this while identifying the harlot. because nothing is presented here to indicate a change of subject from the Roman Empire and its paganism to any other world power present or future. And the reason why he says that is because there's a lot of people who take chapter 17 and the harlot, they associated it with Jerusalem and the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, or they associate it with modern day nations. And yet, chapter 16 was about judgment on the Roman Empire. Is there any reason to think chapter 17 we're changing complete time frames here? No. And what have we noticed over and over and over again? The same exact imagery conveyed in different ways, or the same principles conveyed in different imagery, right? And it's the same idea every time, that God's going to bring judgment upon the empire. One thing that I thought was really interesting, this is from Robert Mounts in his commentary. The ancient Mesopotamian city of Babylon had become the political and religious capital of a world empire, renowned for its luxury and moral corruption. He's talking about the Babylonian Empire. Above all, it was the great enemy of the people of God. For the early church, the city of Rome was a contemporary Babylon. The designation Babylon the Great, used consistently throughout Revelation, goes back to Daniel chapter 4 and verse 30. And it emphasized, as Sweet says, the Nebuchadnezzar-like self-importance of the rulers of Rome rather than the actual size or true greatness of the city. It is a symbol for the spirit of godlessness, which in every age lures men away from the worship of the Creator. It is the final manifestation of secular humanism in its attempt to destroy the remaining vestiges of true religion. Society set free from God is its own worst enemy. And that's kind of how this, both the harlot and the scarlet beast together, that's what they represent. They represent this system of a government, and yet it has completely forsaken all vestiges of any kind of even virtues associated with Jehovah, and instead have completely turned its back on any sense of morality to go after their own desires and decadence. And that's what this harlot represents. She specifically represents that desire, that decadence, that filthiness of sin. Any thoughts through that? Yes, sir.
See a sense in verse 6 about John's wonderment or admiration, amazement, the extent of this, the imagery. She's drunk on the blood of these. So you might think, oh, there's some evil, there's some bad going on, but it's this full extent of the picture that brought it. And I know we're not there yet, but verse 8 is you go on talking, those still dwell on the earth have a wonderment. They're wondering about her also, and that's going to be further explained.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, that contrast there as we end here, notice that the kings of the earth and the people of the earth, they're drinking from her cup, which is full of fornication and abomination, right? But what is she drinking? The blood of the saints, the martyrs, those who have died in faith, staying faithful to the Lord, that she, or because of her influence, have been put to death. She's drinking the blood of the saints. All right, we'll stop there. We will pick up with our questions, and then we'll move on to talk about the beast next week. Again, those notes are back here on the table, and they've been emailed out to everybody as well. Thank you, everybody.